The Downtown Rams podcast is brought to you by Rams On Demand, Seat Giant, Vibe 305, and RWO, Rams World Order. Now enjoy the show.
Down the middle, to the end zone, caught by Brandon Cooks. Shoot your arrows.
He picks. Nickel Roby Coleman
throws. Enzo caught, touchdown. Tyler Higbee. Cooper Kupp plucks it out of the air and gives the Rams the lead. LaMarcus Joyner returns to the lineup with an interception in London. 35-30. Robert Wood, first down 20. 10-5. Touchdown. LA! No, it's Goff who keeps it. And Goff goes crashing into the end zone. Aaron Donald almost beat the football there and comes away with his third sack of the afternoon. Met immediately and sacked. Corey Littleton, have yourself a day. And he gets gobbled up. Savage has to eat it as Michael Brockers picks up the sack. He's decked by Ebukam. Picked off. Marcus Peters. Strutting his stump. Mark Barron the last 4 weeks has been a Pro Bowler.
Oh, it's picked off on the play by John Johnson.
After the throw, and we mentioned that is his 8th completed pass in his career.
Cousins sacked. Ndamukong Suh. Of all the guys, it's the rookie John Franklin Myers who knocks it out of Cousins' right hand. Todd Gurley, 20, 10. Gurley for MVP! Touchdown, LA!
Welcome back, guys, to another Downtown Rams podcast. It's DTR Live. I'm your host, Jake Ellenbogen. Joining me is Alexis Kraft, and we just figured we'll be as spontaneous as the Rams were today. They pick up Eric Weddle in a surprisingly quick move. Really before any free agency happens. LaMarcus Joyner's fate has been determined, and they didn't even have to talk about it. So, Alexis, we got a lot to talk about, and we're only going to be doing this for a quick 30-minute podcast live, so hope you guys enjoy. But what were your thoughts on such a spontaneous decision from the LA Rams?
Well, I mean, first off, I love it. I think it's a great signing. I think, Eric Weddle is a guy who is pretty consistent and someone who's definitely going to help our backfield. Safety was a position that we needed to upgrade at, especially because, it's been pretty obvious that we're not going to bring back LaMarcus Joyner. So I loved it. And it seemed like Eric really wants to be in LA, and, I'm excited.
Yeah, something like this, and before we get into, contract numbers and all of that, I think really the biggest takeaway was, first off, we know the Rams didn't end up spending like a killing on him, so he didn't go there for the money necessarily. I mean, I'm sure that had something to do with it, but to get a meeting and then have him come in and visit, it was like he signed instantly. He had 11 offers, and then he had 5 teams narrowed down to a top 5. He visited the Rams, and he decided, that's it, I'm signing here. And this kind of goes along the theme is what we keep on saying about this Rams team, about Sean McVay and this culture that they've created in Los Angeles. Just because they lost the Super Bowl doesn't mean teams are going to, players are going to look at them and be like, okay, they're going downhill. No, it's kind of different from like the Greatest Show on Turf era where, they lost the Super Bowl to the Patriots, and you kind of saw them, start to, decline, and things started to, fall apart. This is an indication that it's nothing like that. You have a young coach, young quarterback, overall young team. And now I think really the key here, you get the Andrew Whitworth equivalent on defense. Eric Weddle is a 6-time Pro Bowler, I believe, maybe even more than that. And he has just been a model of consistency. He's been an ageless wonder, and he comes in and fits the bill for a team that was just paying $11 million for the entire season after franchise tagging LaMarcus Joyner, who's not really even naturally a free safety. So they gained some height there. Obviously, Weddle's not, a ton bigger, but they gained some height there, and they gained some experience, and they gained consistency. And one big thing for Weddle is he's coming to Los Angeles. He can now stay close to home because he's actually living in, San Diego. So, I think it's a great move. I think everyone wins, and we haven't even discussed price tag yet.
Oh, totally. I mean, I agree. I think it's a great, like I said, a great signing. It makes a lot of sense. It's awesome that they were able to get it done so quickly and, that it happened the way it did. And yeah, I mean, definitely the most exciting news that I've gotten today.
So now we'll get to the details. The nitty-gritty details. Sources told ESPN Weddle could make up to $12.5 million over 2 years of that deal, with $5.25 million guaranteed. So you look at this, and the first thing you're thinking, 2 years. Wow, you were thinking probably a 1 year deal. Probably, I was thinking along the lines of maybe he gets paid 7 to 8. Well, that's kind of along the lines, but over 2 years. And this is somebody that was, he's staring retirement in the face. I know he was really considering retirement last year. This seems to me like this is another Whitworth deal, where it's not as long, it's not as expensive, but you're getting a guy that can come in, can solidify a role. He's a Band-Aid, but he's a luxury Band-Aid. And, he's somebody that I think is really going to fit Wade Phillips' scheme. And he's somebody that, if the Rams do happen to win the Super Bowl this upcoming season, like the expectation should be, Weddle's out. I think he retires. But I think he signed a 2-year deal, kind of like along the lines of Whitworth. I don't think Whitworth would have come back had they won. So it's kind of like that. Whitworth had the 3-year deal, and, they got better each year he was there, and, now it's Weddle. And, Weddle's not as old as people say. He's 34. Let's not act like, he's 40 years old or anything like that.
Right.
His movement skills, clearly are still there. And he's 5'11", so that's, 3 inches taller than a LaMarcus Joyner. So I really just like this move. And, Weddle's just somebody, he just turned 34 as well. And again, consistency. He's constantly one of the best safeties in the game, and this is a great move, and I'm so excited, if I'm a Rams fan, which I am, but just in general for anybody that's listening, because the fact of the matter is this could mean something bigger than really what's being led on here. The Rams fill a position of need for some pretty good value. They didn't pay him, I don't think that was a lot of money, and so I think when you look at that, I think it sets up a potential trade for maybe a Jadeveon Clowney or a D Ford. But what are your thoughts on all of that?
Like you mentioned, I'm just for a second to backtrack to what you said about how it kind of compares to like a Whitworth thing. I think you're right. I think if the Rams win the Super Bowl this season, I think Weddle retires. I think he wants a ring. I'm not saying that's the only reason he came to LA, but it's certainly part of it. He has played a long time. I know he wants to win. And I think that he truly believes the Rams can do that. And so, yeah, I think he's obviously not going to be a guy who's a long-term solution at the safety position, but he can still play. He can still grind. He's going to come in and he's going to make a difference. And he's going to really help the team out. And then I guess, the second part of your question, which is, can you repeat that part of it, the last part, just so I make sure?
Well, yeah, so with the trades, like where do you see that going?
Right. Well,
I see Clowney and Ford.
Well,
potentially.
I don't really think that the Rams are going to make a play for Clowney. Ford is a very real possibility to me. I think he is someone who could fit into the Rams system, and depending on circumstances, I think the Rams might trade for him, but I'm not so sure that I'm really buying that the Rams are going to make a trade at any time, because I think that, the Rams have, or don't have, I should say, a second round pick. They don't really have a high third round pick. I don't see them going out and wanting to trade any of the picks that they have right now. So that's when you have to look into player trades, which I don't think is really realistic either. So I think that I'm more focused on the big free agent guys for the Rams than I am for trades.
Yeah, so my thing with that and I understand your thoughts on that, and I get that. But is this not the same exact situation we were in last year? It's just you're talking about, a Rams team that's more primed to, really prove themselves. They go to the Super Bowl and they lose. They only put up 3 points. It just seems to me like, if had they won the Super Bowl, I don't think they'd be as aggressive, right? But they haven't done anything yet. They went to a Super Bowl and they lost. So the ultimate goal in the NFL is to win a Super Bowl, and I think they're in a very similar situation as last year, albeit a little a little higher in the draft, but I could definitely see them trading the 31st pick just like they did for the the 23rd pick and grabbing a Jadeveon Clowney, right? And then deciding, okay, we're going to do the same thing with Cooks. We're going to sign him long term, and we're going to build up our defensive line, or we're going to build up an area just like they did with the receiver group. And I think they would consider drafting some edge guys and, some defensive interior linemen. I mean, we've talked about, obviously, friends of the podcast, Colin Saunders, Daniel Wise, Renell Wren, just to name a few. But, I do think, because when you really look at it, Alexis, it's exactly like last year. It's setting up to be. The Rams make an interesting move that kind of turns heads, obviously, they didn't make a trade. I would honestly look at two things. I would look at, is the 31st overall pick going to be traded? And then secondly, I would look, is Marcus Peters safe on this roster? And I don't think you could answer either one right now. But I got to tell you, there's some good cornerbacks, both in free agency and both in the draft. And if the Rams feel like they can, find more value, I mean, they'll trade. I don't think Peters is safe. I keep saying that. I mean, I like the way he played towards the end of the year, but I don't know if they're going to want to pay him. So that's kind of the decision they have to make. I mean, you could just play the compensatory pick game. So while it looks like they're losing because they're not trading any of their talent, they keep winning because they're racking up all these 3rd and 4th round picks. Compensatory. They're like right now, they're set up to get a compensatory pick for LaMarcus Joyner, for Roger Saffold, for Ndamukong Suh, and Dante Fowler if they don't sign all 4 of them. And all 4 of those guys could arguably be a 3rd or, a 4th round, at least a 3rd or 4th round. None of them would be a 5th. So those are pretty high picks to get. So, I mean, you kind of, set yourself up. But, I mean, I see it. I think it's going to be interesting, for sure.
Right. I mean, it's the Rams. You can never count anything out. They'll find a way, I'm sure, to surprise us or shock us with something. But it is fun, now that we've kind of answered kind of the Joyner replacement thing. Now we can get into the other positions and think about trades, and it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, it definitely is going to be exciting. I look at something like this as it's just the beginning. It's just the tip of the iceberg. You saw the kind of the dominoes fall with Sullivan and Barron, like we've continued to talk about. I wouldn't be surprised if Brockers is part of that. But to me, I don't think that they're going to. I've heard this. People have mentioned, why don't you just restructure his contract? I don't see that happening. So for that reason, I do think that Brockers could either be cut completely, which is a little too late for that, and be really disrespectful to wait right before free agency to do that, or they could trade him. And you saw what the Steelers were able to do. They weren't going to be able to get Marcus Gilbert back, and they just traded him for basically a 6th rounder when they knew he was gone in free agency. So you can get decent value for good players, spur of the moment. The thing is, Brocker still has another deal on a year on his deal, and I think you could net a 3rd or a 4th round pick for him, which I think is kind of, you'd be getting your Jaguars pick back for Fowler, or you would just you'd add another pick in the middle of the rounds, and that's where you really have to make your money and really hit hard. So the Rams do that, and I think that's definitely an option.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's something that we need to watch out for, because he's a guy who could unfortunately very well be gone. But we'll have to see.
Yeah, we will have to see. There are a lot of things to keep in mind. I didn't think Weddle was honestly going to even be an option. He was released. That's the only reason the Rams were able to come to an agreement. He was already a free agent, because I had people asking how the Rams were able to sign somebody when free agency hasn't started yet. But I mean, that's really what it comes down to. It's the legal tampering period, right?
Mm-hmm.
That starts, what, Sunday night?
I believe so. Or Monday.
That gets nuts. Like, that's when you start, like, that's when everybody starts agreeing to deals when they're not supposed to, but,
Yeah.
That's when things pick up. But, I mean, really just, to make light of everything, the Rams still have plenty of cap room. The Rams now have a free safety. They don't have to worry about paying Joyner. They have to worry about paying any of these guys. They don't have to shell out $15 million per year to Earl Thomas. I think this is. I know people will disagree with me, but I mean, I don't think spending that much on a safety makes a lot of sense, especially when you have somebody like John Johnson who's going to play with them regardless. And they already have guys that, I looked at and I was like, I wouldn't mind if they tried to make Blake Countess a starter or Marquis Christian. I didn't mind that. I would not have minded that at all. But, they kind of bolster that team, that defense. And, year 3 for Wade could be his last year in the league. I mean, that's the last year of his contract. And, Aubrey Pleasant is kind of he's looking in on that position likely. He didn't take the job with the Bengals. I don't know if they offered it to him, but he didn't get the job with the Bengals. And, I think it's going to be really interesting. Year 3 is when it all kind of starts to take shape. And,
right.
I think you got to buckle up, because this Rams offseason is going to be different. It's going to be similar to last year, but it's going to be different as far as, for a franchise that, just went to the Super Bowl, they're going to act like they were, trying to, like they did before the year started. I do think that they're going to act like we need a new mindset. And I think that's really, the Patriots, look at that, the 2 best teams in the league both made moves today. The Patriots go out and they trade for Michael Bennett, which is an interesting move for sure. He's a very talented player. I'm not really a fan of him, but he's a very talented player. And, the Rams then go out and sign Eric Weddle. So, look at that already. The top 2 teams are the ones making the moves.
For sure. It's definitely, I'm excited. I'm excited for Sunday night, because I think you're right. I think it is Sunday night that starts, and it's going to be fun, and there's going to be a lot of conversation, and who knows, maybe the Rams do something completely out of left field that blows us all away, but it's certainly fun to talk about it. I'm more interested, I think, to focus on the Dante Fowler situation, because, as I've mentioned, I really want him back. So I'm excited to see what happens with that.
And that's the really intriguing thing. What does this move mean for Fowler and, all those guys? The interesting thing today, the NFL was kind of busy today, or as you would say, lit today.
Lit.
Antonio Brown was originally going to be traded to the Bills, and then he didn't want to go play in Buffalo. So because he didn't want to play in Western New York, the Steelers couldn't, agree to a trade with the Bills. No idea what the compensatory, the compensation would have been, compensatory structure. I'm not really sure, but Ian Rappaport was the first to report that, and then that didn't happen. And then Antonio Brown was just on Instagram kind of saying, like, I'm going to drop the team I'm going to soon, which, I mean, he's not a free agent, so he's kind of weird about all this stuff for sure.
I'm so over this situation.
I'm too. I just want the Steelers to get their, I want them to get their compensation. I want them to get their first round pick or their second round pick and be able to move on from this. Because, say what you want about the Steelers and how they're the bad guys, but let's be real here. They paid Antonio Brown. They did what they were supposed to. They paid their player, which everyone complains that teams don't do. And now they pay their player, and they're the bad guy. You know, the Raiders traded away Khalil Mack because they wouldn't pay him. It wasn't that they couldn't afford it. They just didn't want to give him money. So
and I go at it with people on Twitter, as you know.
Oh, I know.
A lot. And not not in a mean way, but they come at me because I'm so annoyed with the situation because I don't understand how professional sports has ever gotten to the point where players request trade destinations. I don't understand it. And let me clarify.
Yeah.
Let me clarify. It's different if your contract's almost up and all this stuff. But when you're getting paid and a team wants you and you're pulling a media circus and creating a media frenzy and threatening to retire if you get traded to certain teams, I mean, come on. If Antonio Brown wants out of Pittsburgh that badly, that bad. It's so bad there for him that he can't stand to play another second there. He can't talk to any of the players. He's demanding out. He's screaming and whining, and he wants out. But then, there's trade options for him to get out, and they're handing it to him, and there's teams that really, really want him. But he's like, nah. No. Only X, Y, and Z for me.
Yeah.
Are you serious? These guys are employing you. They're paying you.
Well,
and this is a whole different podcast. But I think it'd be different for me if he was doing this all not in the limelight and keeping it very professional and under, just not creating such a scene. But he's purposely been, as you mentioned, the way that he's handling this has just been so unprofessional. And I can see why certain teams want no part of it.
Well, yeah, it's why I didn't want the Rams to be a part of that. I mean, look,
exactly.
I think the guy's a total head case.
Totally.
I liked him, but I always felt like AB could do no wrong. And we've talked about this off air. While I'm not okay with how much flack Odell Beckham Jr. gets because he is emotional. It's like, look, okay, he acts like a circus clown, on the sidelines at times. You know what I mean? He'll hit, he'll kick the kicking net or whatever he did with that. Okay, that's a little odd. But the dude is the best receiver in football. I've said that countless times. He works so hard on his game. And I'm not saying AB doesn't, but OBJ, and I could be wrong, feel free to chime in, but OBJ I don't believe has ever been in trouble with the law. Nope. AB, I'm not saying he's been in trouble really serious stuff but I mean he was caught what was it? He was speeding, going 120 and a 50 or something. I don't know. I feel like he lives very recklessly. And one of his old teammates who I trust. I mean, I think this guy. I think the world of him. Ryan Clark. I believe it was him. Was saying, this is the type of kid that you're gonna get. You're gonna get. Don't once you give him money, he's gonna just change. And that's kind of the thing. His dad, who is a legend in the Arena Football League, downtown Eddie Brown of Albany Firebirds, he had that kind of, I don't know exactly what it was, but he had that mentality. And I know for a while, him and Antonio Brown, his kid, they weren't on speaking terms. And I know now they are, but
here's
strange.
I'm not even all that. Yeah, is a separate issue. But as you mentioned, the OBJ Antonio Brown comparison, Odell Beckham. There's a very big difference between being an emotional player and wanting to win and being frustrated by not winning, but then taking that and throwing it out at your team. Claiming no responsibility and demanding out of a situation and creating a social media circus. Now, was Odell Beckham right when he's on the sideline to be kicking nets and crying or doing whatever? I mean, probably, that's up for debate. I mean, I'm not a fan of it. But when I look at a player like that, I look at it and I see him having heart and he wants to be on the field and he's mad when he's not on the field. And also keep in mind what Odell Beckham is working with other than Antonio Brown. Okay. Antonio Brown is working with Ben Roethlisberger Odell Beckham's working with Eli Manning, not prime Eli Manning. Right now, Eli Manning, okay? So very, very different situations, right? Antonio Brown, to me, if I'm seeing a guy who just wants to compete and he's hungry to win and help improve a team and just play and feel like he's being respected, because that's the whole thing, is he feels like he's not being respected in Pittsburgh, that's fine. But then don't moan and complain when a team like the Bills or whoever really wants you because they think that you're one of the pieces they need to create a winning team, and they respect you so much that they want you to come to the team, and then you threaten to retire because you just don't want to play for them. This is exactly what Larry Fitzgerald was talking about when he said that Antonio Brown doesn't recognize right now or appreciate that he's playing with the future Hall of Fame quarterback. And don't get me wrong, I don't like Ben Roethlisberger, but he will be a Hall of Fame quarterback. So you've got Antonio Brown who thinks it's so bad to be in Pittsburgh right now. But then there's other teams that are, and I'm not going to say the Bills are on the rise because they got a lot of work to do. I don't know if Antonio Brown would completely fix that, but that's the example. You got teams that want to bring him on. They want him to be part of that future legacy that they're creating. They want to build a team around him. They respect him. They think the world of him. But right now he's playing a completely different game. I don't see that Odell Beckham quality in Antonio Brown where he's so hungry to win and he's so desires to be out there and compete. Because to me, it just looks like he doesn't really care. He just wants to go to a team that he likes or he thinks is cool. He's not going to go to whatever team wants him most, or maybe even the team that'd be the best fit for him. That's not what I'm seeing from him. I'm seeing a guy who really loves all the attention he's getting on social media and likes, pouring fuel in the fire. And I could be wrong, but you know what I mean? It's just such a different situation, and it's totally like it blows my mind. It isn't about the NBA, but it goes back to that whole like Anthony Davis requesting a trade destination thing. How in the world have we gotten to a point where that's even happening? I don't know. I feel it really just blows my mind. But obviously this ties into, because I know a lot of people really wanted the Rams for whatever reason to get Antonio Brown. I want no part of it. I don't want him on my team. I don't want to deal with it. We don't need him, thankfully. But I think he's a head case.
Yeah, I liked him, and I've liked players, and they've kind of just turned into jerks. I mean, I remember liking Kevin Durant, and then I just kind of felt like, Kevin Durant was kind of a snake. And when people started saying that, I totally started seeing it. Mm-hmm. And I think, like, Russell Westbrook was essentially the Odell Beckham Jr. there, because, like, no matter what he did, he was always the bad guy. And I just kind of look at, going back to what we're really talking about here, you have a culture with the Rams that is so powerful, and it sounds like a buzzword. It sounds cliche. It sounds all of that. But at the end of the day, it's so powerful, and really culture is what it's all about. You could have talent. The Jaguars had talent. The Jaguars went from AFC title to the next year not even making the playoffs and looking embarrassing. Right. And guess what that was? That was culture. That was the fact that, I'm sorry, I don't care. People in Syracuse, New York can hate on me all they want. The former Syracuse head coach didn't work out in Buffalo. And then Jacksonville, he got a really good team. And it took them a little bit. And then they had the AFC title opportunity. They blow it against the Patriots. And then this past year, he lost control of the locker room. They had to trade Dante Fowler. They kind of pinned him. He was one of the guys that they pinned, as the scapegoat. And nothing got fixed as soon as they traded Fowler. And it's just, it kind of it goes to show you. It's a culture thing. So you bring in Antonio Brown, and all that's going to do is screw up your culture. I'm sorry. I don't want a guy that literally reporters from the Steelers are literally, like, I kept hearing about these stories of, like, reporters that, cover the Steelers were like, Antonio was such a blast to talk to. And then when he got his contract, he was noticeably not as caring as the individual he was speaking with. He was noticeably, he just didn't really care about anything. And there wasn't the smile that would light up the room. Like, he clearly changed. And I also want to say, I know a lot of people hate Ben Roethlisberger, but the fact of the matter is that all we hear is that, oh, Ben Roethlisberger's a jerk. But what teammate aside from Antonio Brown, has come out and said that. Heath Miller, who was with him for over 10 years, said he was a great teammate. He loved him, and he's a total leader, right? He doesn't have to do that. He's not. He doesn't go. He's retired. It's not like he has to go the next day and face him. Ryan Switzer, who is on the team, maybe that was more PR, but I believe Ryan. Ryan Switzer was like, he's awesome, and there's nothing wrong with him. And I just think it's all.
I have a theory.
Yeah, go ahead.
So let me start this off by saying I have a lot of personal issues with Ben Roethlisberger. So everything that I'm saying is strictly from a football standpoint and a team standpoint. I don't care for him as a person, but you look at what's happening in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has basically, since Ben has been there, been a very competitive franchise. At one point, they had Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown, and Le'Veon Bell. The first step something clearly happened with Le'Veon Bell in the management, which it comes to the paying and the money. He wanted more money, whatever. He's out. Antonio Brown now is having his drama. He's out. So, of course, you can step back and look at the Steelers and say, clearly there's something culturally wrong with the Steelers that people don't want to be there. But my argument is, to me, it seems like an ego problem. Le'Veon Bell is mad because he's not getting the money he thinks he deserves. All power to him, right? I'm not saying he's right or wrong. He thinks he deserves X amount. Okay, go get that X amount. The way that he handled that by sitting out a season, I don't respect. I don't respect. Play your final season, and then the whole argument is, but what if he gets hurt? He's Le'Veon Bell. Yeah, if he gets hurt, that sucks, but I don't think it's going to affect him that much in free agency. That's a whole other argument. Le'Veon Bell's ego gets the best of him. He feels like he's not getting all the respect and the glory he deserves. He's out. Antonio Brown, okay, for whatever reason, either feels belittled by Ben Roethlisberger, feels like he doesn't get the respect he deserves by Ben and the entire team, or X, Y, or Z. Again, feels like his ego is getting the best of him. He doesn't want to play. He wants nothing to do in the Steelers. So my way of thinking is that the issue is not with the Steelers. I really don't think that. Because I think you'd have more people speaking out. If the locker room was that bad in Pittsburgh, you'd have people talking about it, trust me. You'd have more people wanting out of Pittsburgh. We would know about it. It sounds like, for whatever reason, by bad luck, Pittsburgh just got two guys whose egos were so incredibly big that they felt, right or wrong, disrespected because they weren't getting all the glory that they feel that they should get. And so you got Le'Veon Bell gone and Antonio Brown requesting to be gone. That's my theory on it. I don't think that there's an issue in Pittsburgh. So when you talk about culture change, I think you're absolutely right, because I think Antonio Brown is basically reeking of that negative culture, and NFL teams are seeing it because Antonio Brown is a guy that all 32 NFL teams should be interested in, right? All 32 NFL teams. Antonio Brown for a long time was considerably the best wide receiver in the NFL. All 32 NFL teams should be foaming at the mouth to get Antonio Brown on their team, whether they have receivers or not. And you have how many teams interested? You had, I think, 5. Some people said it was 9, then it got down to 5, whatever. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
There's 3 teams left.
There's 3 teams left, but originally, I think, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I believe it was 9. 9 teams out of 32 NFL teams were interested in Antonio Brown. That says something to me. And maybe, all 32 is a stretch, okay? All 32 is a stretch. But 9? And you have reports about how some NFL owners want nothing to do with him because they think he's a toxic cancer in a locker room. You know that they know more than we know. They don't, they talk. They know.
Oh, yeah. Well,
there's no world that only 9 teams are legitimately considering trading for arguably the greatest wide receiver in the NFL right now.
I mean, listen to this quote by him, Antonio Brown. Mm-hmm. Quote, "If they want to play, they're going to play by my rules. If not, I don't need to play." End quote.
And that was when again?
Like, that was...
I remember that, but just to clarify.
Yeah, that was that interview not long ago with Jeff Darlington of NFL Network, I believe.
And you know what? It's just what a disgusting quote.
I mean, like, that's...
You know, Jake, because you've played sports, correct?
Yeah, I mean...
We talked about it. I've played sports. If I ever said anything like that, ever, in a locker room, you know, to people on my team, anywhere, you know what happened to me? I'd get benched forever. Yeah. I'd be kicked off the team. Like, that's unacceptable. That is not a team player. And that is not a guy who wants to sit down and work things out and make sure that everybody on the team feels respected and feels like they're playing an important role. That's, to me, is a guy whose ego is through the roof and everything's about him. It's always going to be about him, and I don't want him on my team.
Well, and I'm sure eventually it affected the Steelers. My biggest issue with Antonio Brown was the Week 17 game that, you know, they win.
Absolutely.
And, of course, they have to watch the other team. You know, I think it was the Browns had to beat somebody. The Browns had to beat the Ravens. Yeah. So the Browns had to beat the Ravens. If the Ravens won, they go to the playoffs. Simple. If the Browns win, then the Steelers just have to win against, I think it was the Raiders, maybe? No, they lost to the Raiders. No, it was, I forget who it was. Bengals? I don't remember. But the Steelers had to win their game. I think it was the Bengals. And they got it done. But the idea that your best player, arguably, on your team, who just signed for a lucrative long-term deal to make him the highest paid wide receiver, which then OBJ got a higher contract, all of that. That's what happens. Mm-hmm. The idea that he would not play the last game of the year. You know, he said he was benched. And that whole thing was really odd to me because, you know, I remember the inactives come out and it says, like, you know, his knee and he's inactive. And I'm like, we didn't even hear about this. Like, you know what I mean? So, you know, and then Mike Tomlin, being, you know, the type of class he is like, yeah, you know, he just, you know, he was banged up and, you know, wasn't able to go today. And, you know, that whole situation irked me from Week 17. And you know,
yeah.
I think it's ridiculous. I think it's unfair to the fan base that, you know, I mean, a lot of this is because of the fans. You know, don't get me wrong, what he does, but the fans did support him. The Steelers organization supported him. You're not talking about, you know, guys that came before him. I mean, keep in mind, they let Emmanuel Sanders go. They let Mike Wallace go. They let Santonio Holmes go. And guess who they decided to pay? They paid Antonio Brown. As soon as they paid him, he changed. And not even a year after his contract, he's already requesting, or not even requesting, but demanding a trade and acting like a child. Right. And, you know, maybe the Madden curse goes to the brain. I don't know.
Well, I think, you know, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Week 17 game for the Steelers, I believe if they would have won, wasn't it they needed to win to go to the playoffs, and if they didn't win, then they needed Cleveland to beat Baltimore? I believe that's what it was.
Yeah.
So, again, this goes back to why you can't compare Antonio Brown to Odell Beckham, okay? Any competitor, forget your issues with the team. You want to win, right? You know you have to win this game to go to the playoffs. All right? He doesn't play. Are you kidding me? Your team needs you. Forget about your stupid little issues with whoever you have it with. Your team has a chance to advance to the NFL playoffs, and it's all riding on this one game. And you're going to let your pettiness and your ego prevent you from stepping onto the field when you're the best player on that roster and everybody knows it, and not contribute to that game to get to the playoffs.
It's
that for me was the moment that it was pretty clear the type of person that Antonio Brown has become. And again, and I want to clarify, it can sound really harsh, everything that we're saying, right? But,
oh yeah.
but it's our job, first off, to analyze what we see and say how we feel. And I'm sure that Antonio Brown, under all of that ego and under all the stupid issues and stuff that he's dealing with and spewing out right now, I'm sure he has a big heart. I'm sure he is a very kind person and all that good stuff. Okay. I'm not knocking his, him entirely, but I'm saying it does raise character issues when you see stuff like this. And that, I think the first sign that people should have noticed was week 17 when his team needed him more than ever to be out there. And he wasn't, because what kind of competitor isn't on the field? It doesn't make sense to me, and I think it's really sad.
Yeah, it's all of that. I mean, that's really, it just further puts an emphasis on our point that this is why, Rams fans, that we didn't want the Rams to make that trade for Antonio Brown. And, I think obviously, they respect him as a player, but they were
exactly.
really close to acquiring Odell Beckham Jr. And if the Giants didn't up their offer, Odell Beckham Jr. would be a Ram right now. Right. And I don't know where the Rams would go with him. I don't know if they would have won the Super Bowl. I don't know, but I do know that they were really close to acquiring him. It didn't get done. They got Brandon Cooks. That's the end of the story. They're not going to go out. They're not going to waste assets to grab another receiver because it's a luxury. This isn't, picking the best player available. This is you like, okay, I don't really, I'm taking our receivers for granted. And because we have a bunch of amazing, number one receivers that are more mid-tier number ones and we don't have an elite receiver by any means, I am going to want Antonio Brown. Like, Antonio Brown's 31. Antonio Brown's a head case. Antonio Brown's going to be expensive. The Rams have the receiver group set. They're eventually going to have to, bump up Robert Woods' pay. I think they're going to bring him back again on another deal.
Right.
Cooper Kupp is going to have to get paid. Josh Reynolds might have to get paid if they want to go with 4 receivers. They have, limited. They don't have limited. They really have unlimited opportunities because you talk about those 4 and then you have Gerald Everett, So now you could have 5 targets and now you're not, you're still not mentioning Todd Gurley, who is still, very good in the passing game. So to get Antonio Brown would make 0 sense. To trade, Brandon Cooks for Antonio Brown and give away a first rounder makes even less sense. So you traded a first rounder last year for Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks, how I look at that trade, that was because the Rams did want Sammy Watkins, or they wanted, a Sammy Watkins type of player. Not necessarily level. Maybe they wanted a little bit better, but they wanted, that deep threat. They wanted a guy that could, grab those yards after the catch. OBJ, Brandon Cooks, So they go out and get Brandon Cooks, right? Because that originally fills a need that they felt that they had. Okay. Then they tag Joyner because they're like, all right, we're not touching the safety class, right? We're just gonna tag Joyner. We like Joyner. He's coming off a top 5 safety season. It didn't work out. So they go and get Weddle. So now they have Weddle. And I keep saying, they could put Ebukam in it at inside backer. They could bring back Fowler. Or they can sign, Shaquille Barrett, get the edge started, really have that rotation, let somebody earn it out of Okoronkwo and Trayvon Young and Justin Lawler, And then their interior, you have Donald, JFM, you have, Sebastian Joseph Day. And this draft, I think, is loaded with interior line depth where I feel like the Rams really have put themselves in a position to make another big trade. And I think it could happen. I think, the Rams are either going to pick in the second round. I think they're either going to stay in the first if somebody like Polite falls, or they're going to trade way before the draft. They're going to get a Clowney or a Ford or somebody like that, or they're going to trade down. But I really, I think if they trade down, it's going to happen during the draft. I think if they trade away their pick, it's going to happen way before the draft. And I think if they pick at 31, that's going to be something where they decide at the last, just based on where their board is, okay, this guy's
Exactly.
way too high. I don't think that they're going into the draft like we're going to trade away our pick. But if somebody comes up, like Clowney, and it's like the Texans are only asking for a first rounder, and oh, by the way, we can do a sign and trade where Clowney's already signed to the team, then I think they do that. And honestly, right now, if you want to sign Clowney because of the franchise tag that's on him, it would cost you 2 first rounders. If the Rams had a deal in place with the Texans could void his franchise tag and just trade him. And I think that's honestly what they would consider doing. So,
Come on.
Can
you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I all the sound in my headphones cut out, so I couldn't actually hear what you were saying. But everything that you've said and I've agreed with, and I just wanted to. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just I think Rams fans should be bracing themselves for a huge move. I think this is just, again, the tip of the iceberg, just to kind of wrap this podcast up. I think you could definitely see Clowney. You could see a Ford. You could even see a corner. Like, I wouldn't be surprised, and this is going to sound crazy, right? But I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think the Jaguars are going to pay Jalen Ramsey, right? I just don't see it. I would be surprised if the Rams sent Marcus Peters over and a high pick for Jalen Ramsey. Maybe Marcus Peters in a 3rd rounder. I'd do that all day. So you basically drafted Jalen Ramsey in the 3rd round. Now, on one hand, you gave up a 2nd rounder for Marcus Peters. That kind of hurts. But at the same time, you get somebody that, there's no, what if with Jalen Ramsey.
Right.
His technique's there. He's tall. He's extremely fast. He's already a top 5 corner, maybe top 3. And he's extremely young. With the thing is with Peters, you see the way he plays makes him susceptible to being beat. And when he's on, he's on. But when he's off, he's really off. He becomes a liability for the entire defense. If you put Ramsey next to Nickel Roby-Coleman and next to Aqib Talib, now you're really cooking with gas. So now you have Ramsey. That's the guy you decided to trade for. And then you decide, because this really, it comes down, do I want to pay Marcus Peters because I have him, because I committed to him because of picks? Or do I want to pay him because I need to? And if your argument is that you need to pay him, just swap him out now before, so because Jalen Ramsey's going to need a contract. So swap him out, get Ramsey, and pay Ramsey. And I know it sounds simple, and it's not, and I get that, but, I'm telling you, you could see a big move from the Rams, and it's coming. I really believe it's coming, and it may not include the first round pick they have, but, they could give up some 2020 picks too. Let's keep that in mind. If they want to, move back up into the first, they could do something. I know someone mentioned it on Twitter. They asked Downtown Rams and a couple other Rams sites, if Ed Oliver fell, would you make a Marcus Davenport type of offer to trade up and get him? I'm not a fan of trading up in the draft. I just think we've interviewed too many guys where it's like, okay, that guy is literally a top 60 player, could fall the 3rd or the 4th depending on how the draft goes. So I'm not a fan of trading up for a draft pick, but I am a fan of either trading away the 1st round pick, right, or trading down, or picking, But that's how I look at it.
Yeah.
It's just, I think.
And sorry, go ahead.
I think you keep cutting out. That's what I think.
Yeah, me too. I keep my connection is bad, but I know we have a meeting anyway, so we have to wrap it up. But I do have news that I just saw.
Wow, 4th round pick for AB.
Nope.
What?
No, that's not it.
Did you see it?
What?
I can't tell what's going on. Twitter's ablaze.
I just saw Antonio Brown tweet a picture of his agent, and he says at work, and his agent's writing out stuff.
But see, I think he's going to the Raiders.
I do too.
And someone said 4th round pick, but he wasn't. I don't buy it.
He's not coming to the Rams, people. Antonio Brown is not going to end up a Ram. And that's me speaking it into existence because I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, I don't want that either. Why? If it's not broke,
don't fix it.
So, with that being
All
said,
right.
I think we're gonna wrap this thing up. For Jake Ellenbogen, she's Lex Craft. This has been another Downtown Rams podcast. It's also been another DTR Live podcast. We love doing these, so please let us know how you thought this went, and give us your thoughts. If you have any trade ideas, we'd love to hear them. If you have any signing ideas, we'd love to hear them. If you have any draft ideas, we'd love to hear them. Also, shout out to Downtown Sports Network that hosts this podcast. It's going to be hosting a bunch of other podcasts, and we're really excited to bring in Downtown Sports Network. So if you're interested, you can inquire about Downtown Sports Network. You can inquire in DMs, or you can email downtownsportsnetwork@gmail.com for anyone that is looking to get involved in the podcast network. All right, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed, and take it easy.